My name is Kristen Espinar, and I am happy to be talking to you today about ADHD study tips. Okay, so now before we get started, if you are watching this live or if you are watching this recorded, I need you to do this. So anytime that you watch this, I need you to do this. So I need you to check in via Navigate for Students app. So if you don't have this app, stop, download this app because you definitely need it for school and managing your appointments, and it's definitely like the easiest way to manage your appointments. So I wanted to kind of show you what you would need to look for. So stop this video if you're watching the recorded, and if you're watching this live, just do it after the class or after the session. But I want you to download the Navigate for Students app. Now, after you do that, I want you to go to a place called To-Dos. You'll see this right here. So if you click on To-Dos, then you'll have To-Dos and Events, and you've got all of our workshops here. And all that you need to do is click on it. So you'll find the workshop. So for this one, do we have it here? It's not on here, but this is the ADHD one. All you really need to do is click this little part, and then you're good. So please, whenever you're watching this, stop and then check in that you have attended this training. Okay, now just in case you don't know who I am, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Kristen Espinar, and I am an academic success coach in the Learning Center housed on the Green Bay campus. And I also work with Sam Lee. Sam Lee is the other academic success coach. So currently we have two academic success coaches, and what we do is we help students build better systems and habits for success. And we work with things like time management, organization, productivity, catching up on late work, those sorts of things. Now, the TLC actually has a ton of resources to offer you. So we have academic success coaching, but we also have tutoring. So we're here to help you if you really need support with those systems for success. But if you're struggling with the particular content of a course, then you're going to want to go to tutoring. So if you're struggling with math and getting those concepts, then we also have this resource for you. We have the Writing Center, so you can connect with specialized writing tutors if you need help planning out an essay or getting feedback. We have a ton of workshops and events like you are seeing right now. And then we have an essay correction service. Last semester it was called Brain Fuse, but now it's called Net Tutor. And you can connect with this in any Canvas course that you have by opening up the course and then going down the sidebar to online tutoring, and then just following the prompts to go get help for writing. And actually, NetTutor has like on-demand online tutoring. So if you need a tutor at midnight and you're freaking out about a math test and you need some help, you are probably able to access it at that time as well. Okay, so in this workshop, I'm going to talk about these things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the experience of students with ADHD. Then we're going to talk about the importance of structure, of engagement, and building creativity and accountability into your academic experience. Okay, so first I want to talk about your experience. Now, I have to make the disclaimer, I am not an ADHD expert. I do not have any training in this. I do not have any certifications or qualifications. I just work with a lot of students that have ADHD. So because of that, I'm always trying to look for better tips and advice in order to help them. But what stands out to me most with these students is the experience, the emotional experience that they have with education. And so first I want to talk a little bit about that experience that you might be having. So the first thing I want you to know is you're not alone. There are a lot of people that struggle with ADHD or are not, following neurotypical approaches to academics, and that causes a lot of I don't want to say shame, but I see students very upset about their experiences in college and being able to adapt to that experience. So you're not alone. There are other people that struggle with ADHD and then trying to kind of fit into this neurotypical world of academics. And the issues that normally struggle with are really those what do we call them? Like the executive functioning issues of time management and organization. And then there's a lot of feelings of shame around that, where students feel like, I'm not good enough because I don't have the right time management or the right organization, or I'm not turning things in or doing things in the right way. So a lot of people have this feeling of shame, which then kind of can lead to further feeling like overwhelmed and kind of out of the loop from everybody. And I feel like a lot of students with ADHD also have a feeling that they need to please everybody, or at least this is what I've been told. Like, you're always trying to prove yourself, always trying to show that you are, valuable, and you have worth and you have value and you're able to do these things. But because your brain is working in a different way, I think students feel that their value and worth is not always seen. So I bring this up because students, that when we talk about these things in our sessions, it can be really emotional. And I see the emotional connection that students have had in trying to fit into this neurotypical world their whole lives, in school from the time that they were kindergarten. And I can see that it causes a lot of pain and a lot of stress. So I want you to know that I see you and I see that experience. And I just want to validate that experience for you, that it's been difficult for you. And you've probably tried a lot of different ways to make it work. And, you've probably been struggling. So I hope that what I have to share with you today is helpful for you. Now, another thing is that everybody has symptoms of ADHD. Everyone has a time where they're not great at time management, or, they're procrastinating or whatever. But the difference is they're tend to be very light in most people, or minimal times, or kind of a fleeting experience. And it's not as overwhelming as the ADHD student experiences. And it's for neurotypical people, it's not as big of as a barrier as for students that are struggling with ADHD. So just because other people do suffer from procrastination and maybe time management issues, it does not dismiss your experience, because your experience is unique with this. One thing I've noticed is that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes ADHD students also have a slower processing time than other students. So this means it can take a little bit longer to complete tasks. They can go slower with things. They may be the last to finish things. And with ADHD, you often also have an inaccurate sense of time. So the slow processing with the inaccurate sense of time really can add to this complication of time management. And it really creates a larger struggle. So these are some of the things that we're going to try to address today. Now, I know it feels a little counterintuitive, but the key to success is structure. And I know it's like, but structure doesn't work for me. But honestly, putting in structure in a way that works for you is what's going to help keep you grounded, keep you on track, and kind of keep track of all of the things that are kind of flying around in your head. So I'm going to give you some ways to add structure. The first thing that I want you to do is implement the power planning strategy. Now, if you want help with any of these things, you can always make appointments with us and we can go through them in detail. But we talk about so many of these things in academic success coaching that we already have a lot of resources to help you with these. Now, the power planning strategy is something that I do with almost every student that comes to me, ADHD or not. Most people need help with power planning. And it's basically a system of having a planner, so knowing your time and doing some time blocking with that, and then also adding weekly checklists of things that you need to do. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can implement this, and I really want to emphasize that the best way to implement it is the way that's going to work best for you. So for many students like to use a paper planner. Some students like to use a whiteboard. Some students like to use this digital resource that I recommend, which is called the Power Planner app. But the key component is that you want to have a planner where you put all of your fixed commitments on it. So you say, these are the days and times I have my classes. These are the days and times that I'm going to commit to studying. And then you also take time to look at your week ahead and then say, what are your main goals that you're going to achieve on those days during study times? And you highlight a series of goals to complete on each day. So for somebody that's just starting, you might want to start with 3 goals or 5 goals. Try not to make it overwhelming, because what you want to do is get into the habit of having a commitment to yourself about, okay, now I'm going to go to class, and after class, now I'm going to study. So on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 1 to 5, I study in the library. That's your first commitment, and you're going to make that by creating your schedule on your planner and then doing it. So after class, you go to the library and you sit down to study. When you've created your checklist for the week, you look and say, okay, what are my 3 goals to complete for this day? And then you sit down, you do those goals, and then you go. Now, there's a lot more to this, so I'm actually going to recommend that you watch the Power Planning Strategy and the Weekly Goal Setting System. It's 2 trainings that I have in the Success Library, which go into this in detail and show you exactly how to do it with a lot of examples. Now, if you feel like I need somebody to help me through this, you can also make an appointment with me and I will help you set one up for yourself. Now, if you like doing it digital, you can use the Power Planner. That's one that I recommend. I've heard O-Wave is a cool planner that is very good for students with ADHD. It's kind of a different way of looking at time. I have not tried this one myself, but you might want to try it. I would say the majority of my students use a paper planner, and some of them use a whiteboard. And they might just like put their whiteboard up in their dorm room and look at it every day and work off of what they need to do. But you also need to figure out, okay, what's my schedule? Put it on my planner. What am I going to do each day? And then where am I going to do it? Am I going to do it in the dorm room? Am I going to do it in my bedroom? Am I going to do it in the library? So finding that space is really important, and then sticking to that structure. Now, it does not have to be regimented. Every 5 minutes you're doing this and this and this. You probably want to keep it a little bit loose. Like, okay, I'm going to go to my class, then I'm going to go study. And then I've got these things to achieve in this period of time. Let me focus on those things. And then whenever you're done, you can go, or you give yourself permission to go, or you give yourself permission to work ahead. Now, the next thing is I want you to break down your tasks. So this comes with this checklisting. One mistake that students make is when they put on their planner, their assignments, they only put on the assignments. So they'll say like, okay, I've got this paper and it's due next Friday, but they don't break down the steps to completing that assignment. So this is one thing that I want you to do, is to think about what are the 3 to 5 steps that you'll need to take in order to write that essay, right? Step 1, probably going to have to understand the assignment. Step 2, do the research. Step 3, write an outline and a rough draft. Step 4, revise and submit, right? And you could expand this, make it shorter, but you want to break down those steps, and you probably want to assign those to different days. So on Monday, maybe look at the assignment, start some research. On Wednesday, during your study time, start working on the outline and the rough draft. And then on Friday, during your study time, do your final draft and submit. Now, another thing that I recommend doing is adding buffer time, and you can take this one or leave it depending on how your brain works. So I would say be flexible with this and experiment with it a little bit, but I like to do buffer time. So by buffer time, I mean booking a little bit of extra time to complete tasks so that you take into account that you're probably going to be, you're going to be feeling like procrastinating. Maybe you're sick, or some event has gotten in the way, or your time management hasn't been great. So you want to give yourself a little bit of extra time. So for example, with me with these workshops, every time I create a workshop, it probably takes me 4 different sessions to sit down and create a good workshop, right? I've got to pick the topic, I've got to do some research on it, take some notes, build it out, and then probably like revise and maybe run through it a couple of times. So I'd say at least 4 sessions to make a good workshop. But I know that probably if I book 4 sessions in my schedule, one of those times I'm going to be overworked. Maybe I'm going to have a conflict with, having to pick up my kid from school or something, or maybe I just don't feel like working at that time. So when I book it in my schedule, I book buffer times, and I'll book it for 6 periods in my schedule. And then what usually happens is that first period comes along and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not ready to work on this workshop yet. I don't want to do it. So I don't do it and I do something else. But what that does is it puts the seed in my head of this time limit. Like, okay, the time has started ticking. I need to start working on this workshop. So it gets it in my head, it gets it on my radar, and then it kind of builds the motivation and the anticipation and also that need to work towards a deadline. So it starts that deadline a little bit earlier than you might do if you don't use buffer time. And I would say use buffer time anytime. So if you need to go to class at 10, give yourself 15 minutes and say, like, just tell yourself that class is starting at 9:45. So you're building buffer time into your daily activities. And then, like I said about the time blocking, you want to do this time blocking. This power planning strategy in the Success Library shows you exactly how to do that. But basically, you need to know what you should be doing and where you should be at. And specifically, I want you to time block your study time. And I want it to be the same day and same time each week so that you're committed to achieving the 3 goals that you need to achieve during that time. Now, another thing that you can do is using different timers. One of the best ones for students with ADHD is called the Pomodoro Technique. And it's like a technique where you put on a timer, you work for like 15 minutes or maybe 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, work for another 25 minutes, take a 15-minute break, work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. So there's a whole thing on it, and I've done a training about this. It's also in the Success Library called What's Your Organizational Style? I think that could be useful because that training also looks at different ways of getting organized that might work for you. So there's a lot of different options that you can kind of pick and choose from. But what I like about this is you only have to have your attention for a short period of time and then you can take a break. So you're not just sitting and staring at a piece of paper for an hour. You're saying, like, you're taking one small thing, like, okay, let me look at this task. Let me see what my essay is for 25 minutes. I'm going to look and try to understand the task, the rubric, start looking at the research. Then I'm going to take a 5-minute break, have a snack, walk around, come back, and then work on my outline. So it works with breaking down these tasks in small ways and then working in small periods of time and giving yourself enough breaks that your mind gets a little break and then you go back to your work. You can just use a timer for this as well. You can just kind of use basic timing, but the Pomodoro technique is pretty popular. Now, engagement is another area of importance. So I think that in order to stay engaged with the content, and to understand the content well, you have to be interested in the content. Now, sometimes content is not interesting, so you have to be creative in the different ways that you are learning to engage with that content. So the first thing that I want you to do is understand this idea of creating a schemata or building context. So the best thing that you can do when you are engaging with boring content is try to figure out how you connect with it and what you know about this topic. So for example, if you are doing a degree in human resources and you're reading about some boring thing in human resources and you can barely get through the whole thing, you need to try to make a connection to your real life. When have you had interactions with human resources? What kinds of jobs have you had in the past? What was the onboarding situation like? What do people say about human resources people? What are the stereotypes about human resources? Whatever you know already previously about the topic, you need to try to access that. So you need to activate your previous life experiences and try to connect it to it. This helps you build context and helps you make more connections. You can also try to do something that's interesting. Watch a video about human resources. Watch a video about the content. Read an article. Why do people hate human resources? Like, whatever it is, ask yourself questions and then follow your interest around the topic. That's going to help you create a schemata, build context, and that is what helps increase your comprehension of very difficult to understand content. Now, this is really useful when you're reading something that is really, really boring. And you can build this schemata by previewing the reading. Now, again, I have a whole training on this. It's called the Reading Skills in the Success Library. So if you're struggling with reading, I would definitely recommend watching this one. But basically, you can preview content by looking it over first, looking for titles, subtitles, images, looking at how the content is structured before you read it, and that helps you build a mental structure for it, which helps you to increase your comprehension. Now, if you're really struggling, I recommend using skimming and scanning techniques. It's a lot to go into, so I'm going to recommend that you watch that video if you feel like you're struggling with reading due to inattention. And this is a way to kind of get around that with still getting the main concepts. Now, anytime that you can build a story around the content, try to build a story. So I had a student recommend that one thing that he likes to do is if it's history, for example, and I don't think this only has to be history, but this is a good example. He likes to build a story. So if he's reading about an event in time, he sees the main people as characters. He looks at the events, he looks at what happens, actions, the results. He talks about the story. He will tell his parents the story. So kind of like build that story in your head and then like explain it to other people. Goes through this processing of your brain where you input knowledge and then you process the knowledge and then you output it. And that really is going to help your memory and your comprehension. So in trying new ways to be creative and engage with the content is going to help you beat boredom and help you have a larger understanding and kind of get through the pain of just like staring at the page and not getting it. Now, the student who recommended the history thing also recommended being really creative with how you approach your studies, and I thought this was a great idea. So I'm going to hop over here. So this student really recommended using a lot of video and audio support. So if you're getting stuck with a certain concept in like a book and you know that it's going to be on a test, then just supplement it with like videos. So if you can usually video a theory or a concept and you can watch it on YouTube. You can search for big concepts, and sometimes that visual, that audio, maybe the style of explaining or the voice use is going to be easier for you to understand that content, but seek other ways to understand the content. So look for the concepts in the course. If you're not getting it in the course, try to supplement with the plethora of resources that you have on the internet. Another thing you can do is use like summary reports, especially for literature. So there's a lot of things called Grade Saver, e-notes, Cliff Notes, where they give you the summaries, the main ideas. They can really help you get that content in a bulleted way, which can help you to revise the content, identify main ideas, help you study. It's not meant to replace doing the work, but I think for students that struggle with ADHD, it can be a great support. You can also do audiobooks. You can, listen to podcasts on different content or topics. If you're doing a book about, like, let's say you're doing Moby Dick for school and like you read it, but you had a hard time focusing, it could be interesting to listen to some lit podcasts where people are talking about it. You're going to understand the concepts in a new way. You can then try to go back and read it, and you will have built that schemata, that context to help you understand it more. Then you go to the Cliff Notes, you revise some of the main ideas, main points, help that, use that as a way to structure your notes. Now, if you have the ability to record your class content, definitely record it because you'll be able to go back and review points that you missed. You won't have to sit through the whole thing. You can kind of jump around and get the main points. And then one thing that you probably want to do is if you have an accommodation for ADHD, make sure to ask about, I think it's Glean or Gleam, where you, it's like a special tool to help ADHD students in the classroom. Now, another thing that you can do is reward yourself. So plan out a big reward yourself for every finishing a task, finishing an assignment, and consider that, your brain probably needs a little bit of dopamine. So you can have big rewards like a dinner or a night out after a big exam, or a small reward. So if you're doing the Pomodoro technique, you can maybe take your 25 minutes, work on something, then eat a piece of chocolate and walk around for 5 minutes, then go back, work another 25 minutes, text a friend real quick. Don't get, into a super deep texting conversation, but, something that's going to give you like a small hit of dopamine to your brain and to help motivate you to keep going. Now, the difficult thing for you is you always have to be looking for new ways to do things. So you need to notice when something isn't working for you. So like I said with the buffer time, I would recommend it, try it out, experiment with it, but then notice if it's not working. And this is called taking a metacognitive approach, where you're stepping outside your brain a little bit and you're thinking like, what do you need? What new things can you try? And what resources can give you more ideas? Now, one resource that I've been watching here is a great YouTube channel called How Do ADHD. Let's look at it real quick here. So it's by Jessica McCabe, and she has some very good actionable advice for students, for people that struggle with ADHD. So I would really recommend starting here. She has, planners and journals, masking. She talks about neurodiversity, executive functioning. She talks about the Pomodoro technique, body doubling. I'm going to talk about this in a minute. I got it from her. Motivation bridge. This one is very good for, I think it kind of connects to that idea of the buffering that I talked about, but she says it better than I do. So this is an amazing resource I would recommend using. And getting ideas on finding these new creative ways to get through academics. Now, I did briefly mention accommodations, and I want to make sure that if you need an accommodation, that you do check in with our accessibility services. So if you don't know what to do, just Google UWGB accessibility services, and you can go here, and then they will tell you, you probably want to go here. So applying for academic accommodations, how to apply, and the documentation. So this is where you're going to start. If you need help, just reach out and I'll get you in contact with the right people. Now, these are some of the accommodations that I know. There's some digital books. They have digital tools that are especially available to you when you have accommodations, extra test taking time. This is very good for students that are struggling with slower processing time or getting distracted. And then I don't work in this department, so I don't know that everything that's available, but they can tell you the other accommodations you might qualify for. And the process is you want to sit down and talk to them. Then you go through your documentation, and like I said, you want to go to Student Accessibility Services, UW Green Bay. Okay, finally, I think one of the biggest things that helps students is accountability. And there's a lot of different ways to implement accountability. So you can have live accountability, and we have a lot of students that do just accountability meetings with us simply for the accountability. So as academic success coaching, they may do 30 minutes a week or 1 hour every couple weeks where they, check in, tell us what's going on, what classes they have. We talk about their lives and their schedules and choices that they've made, oh, what did you do this week, and when are you going to do this, and what's the best decision here. I've had students that know they have to work on a paper, but then they want to go to a wedding, and we discuss those things and try to help them be accountable for managing their time. And it's been really helpful for a lot of students just to have somebody that they feel that they have to report to. And we're not going to yell at you. We're not going to try to make you feel bad. We're just here to be that accountability partner. But it doesn't have to be with us. If you have a good connection with your weekly advisors, you could do, or with your advisor, you could do a weekly meeting with your advisor. You can connect with the dean of students. I've seen students connect on a weekly or bi-monthly basis with accessibility. Mesa, whoever it is that you connect with, you can have that live accountability with them. And we have a lot of resources for you at this school. Now, you saw in this video that she was talking about body doubling, and I thought this was a cool concept. So Jessica, what was her name? McCabe, I think. She talks about body doubling, which is basically this idea of where you have somebody sitting with you while you do your work. Now, it could be like your mom or a friend or your roommate, or it could be like even a dog, like your pet, but it's like somebody is sitting with you so that you have that feeling of accountability of like, okay, this person's watching me, so I need to do my work right now. And, it could be like you make a deal with a friend and say like, hey, let's just work together so that we are holding each other accountable to doing our work. Now, I've even seen like people doing live streams of this on TikTok. So they'll do like a live stream and they'll just put a sign up and say like, I'm a nursing student working to complete my degree, study with me. And it's literally a live stream of them studying. And then anybody that wants to study joins in the live stream and just has that body double or that, accountability in where people are just virtually getting together to study. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. And I know that this is very effective because a lot of ADHD students really struggle with the idea of having like a deadline, a time limit, and having to be accountable to that deadline or time limit. So it's also helpful to have to be accountable to a person. So I mentioned a lot of trainings in here. We have really done a lot for our Success Library, and we have trainings there. We put our replays there, but the main ones that I would focus or tell you to work on right now would be the power planning strategy and the weekly goal setting system. This is key, key, key. I would say do the organizational style one as well, because you might want to find out what your style is and get tips on how to best get organized for your personal style. And I think that that's really important, is to understand how to implement all of these tips in a way that works for you. And then the reading skills, if you're struggling with reading, this is a very good one, but we have many other ones. So we have digital declutter, staying motivated till the end of the semester, note-taking skills, anti-cram. We have a lot of resources there for you. Now, when I was creating this training, I had a lot of Q&As. So one student said, I have troubles staying focused during lectures. What can I do to pay attention for the entire lecture? So you probably want to make your brain active, and you want to use some different note-taking techniques. There's one called the Cornell method. You might want to use that. It's going to help keep your brain a little bit more active. You can write little questions on the side and follow that curiosity, where you're trying to create that engagement. But I would also say, if you can, make a recording so that you can go back and get areas that you missed. Another one, I have ADHD and autism, wondering how I can stay focused to remember certain ideas and concepts for more than 1 minute. So again, I'm not an expert in this. I'm definitely not claiming to be an expert in this. So I'm just going to be giving you anecdotal experience and tips that I've had. So I would say if you're struggling with the concept for more than 1 minute, it's definitely something that you should be talking to your doctor about and seeing what kind of support that they would recommend for you with that, because that is a very short period of time. But I would say take the the tips that I've given and try to apply them. You really want to have an active approach to learning. So the skimming and scanning, it's something that even I do. I feel like I don't have the attention to sit down and like read a whole text. So I really utilize skimming and scanning in almost all areas of my life. And it's a way more active approach to learning. I feel like it's the passive approach of just like sitting and taking in information that is not as helpful for some students that are not neurotypical, and you have to be really active about it. So that's why I mentioned the Cornell note taking, making those connections to yourself, building your own schemata, activating your background experience, taking control of the text rather than, or the lecture, rather than thinking of it as a passive thing being done to you. In college, I feel like ADHD is impairing my college experience as compared to someone who is neurotypical. Every semester, I find myself feeling depressed, isolated, and unable to not feel guilty if I'm not working on something. How can I manage my anxiety about falling behind and making time for myself? So this is why I wanted to talk about the experience, because I would say that this is one of the most emotional things that I see in academic success coaching, are these feelings that students are telling me that they're having. And first of all, you have to acknowledge that your brain is not the same, and it's okay, and that you need to find a way. You need to find your way. Your way does not have to be the neurotypical way, but you have to find the way that works for you. So that's why when I talk about adding structure, I know that it's important to add structure for you, but you do need to know what you are going to be so you have to figure out what works for you. So I gave the example of the power planning strategy. You have to add structure. The key here is adding structure, but how? So some students work really well with digital planner. Some students work way better with like having a looser whiteboard. Some students, like most students I would say, like using a paper planner. You have to make it work for you, and that's what I stress for all students. Like the concept of the power planner is, there's two main concepts. You've got to have your schedule, and you've got to have some sort of like checklisting, right? But how you apply that needs to be in a way that works for you. Just because it works for another student doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So I would say that's how you need to approach all of your education is, yes, you're going to feel guilt, shame, sadness. Like those are the feelings that have been building up for a very long time. So, we do have resources on campus to help you with that. We have the Wellness Center, so you can talk about and work through those feelings. But at the same time, you have to start cultivating a more positive mindset and giving yourself a little bit of grace and saying, okay, my brain works differently. How can I work best with my brain? And then you need to experiment and try new things and figure out what's working for you, what's not, and take that metacognitive approach. I would say this is going to be such a great resource for you. Even, me just like looking through these content, it's very good. It's very actionable. It's very specific, and it gives a lot of tips of things that you wouldn't even consider. Here we have ADHD and autism. So that's a topic that just came up in the questions. And I would say this is a great place to start thinking outside of the box, and also cultivating a more positive mindset around you, because you need to be in a positive place in order to do well. Now, if you feel like you really need some support with, creating that structure, definitely reach out to us. This is something I do with almost every student, and it really is probably the most impactful thing that I do with students, is helping them build that power planning strategy into their life in a way that works for them. So do not hesitate to reach out. Okay, so I just wanted to remind you of our resources. You can always come to us for academic success coaching. We have our writing center, we have tutoring, we have these workshops. Any past workshops are in the Success Library. Future workshops will be live and then go into the Success Library, so you want to have access to that. Previously, we had Brain Fuse for essay correction. Now we have something called Net Tutor, and it has live tutoring, and also you can just drop off an essay for feedback. I want to say thank you for spending the time with me. If you have other tips to share about things that have been helpful for you as having ADHD in school, please let me know so I can always build my own knowledge and repertoire of tips to share with other students. Thank you again and have an amazing day.